All right, everybody, I'm Patrick. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Juno-106 today. This is the 61 key subtractive synthesis, so same generating process that Jason was just demonstrating on his analog. It's got DCO, digitally controlled oscillators, which just basically means it keeps a stable pitch as opposed to a voltage controlled oscillator. Those take a little bit to warm up, and sometimes the pitch can go in and out. With digitally controlled oscillators, you don't have that problem. There's a schematic here. I don't know enough about electrical engineering to really explain that. I just thought it was very interesting. Maybe someone else could talk a little bit more about it. But basically, the main point is there's some confusion about DCOs being like a hybrid digital analog synthesizer. I would consider it 100% analog. The only difference is the master clock is controlled digitally, but you still have a fully analog wave generating process. And if you look at the thing on page 2, just goes through the basic waveforms. We have sawtooth. I'll try to get something really simple started here and demonstrate that. I don't know if you can see on the Dan's oscillator, pretty sharp. That's where you get the really crunchy, crispy sound. And these can be turned on independently, so you can have them both on top of each other. Makes a fatter sound if you have both the square wave and the saw wave, but just the square wave. And if you set the DCO to manual, you can control the pulse width of that square wave, basically how long the tops of that square is. So you can get more open, wider sounds, or more crunchy, thin.
Patrick, I have a question.
Sure.
So with those buttons, it was a square wave and a saw wave.
Mm-hmm.
Does that then start a new oscillator? Are those separate oscillators, or is it somehow able to apply those waves to the same oscillator?
They are controlled by the same chip, but it's generating still two waveforms.
Cool. And it mixes them if they're both on.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep, so you talked a little bit about that PWM pulse width modulation, how that affects the sound. Hear a little bit of that. Again, further on down the sheet, I just talk about digital stepping. That's what you could get in some newer digital synthesizers. There's always this big debate about digital versus analog, but digital, basically, you could end up with stepping, which basically means when you're going through adjusting your parameters, you'll be able to hear distinct cutoffs. It's not going to be as smooth as it would be with a voltage controlled. On the next page, there's just a little diagram about the resonance. I'd like to point out Jason did a good job talking about how that affects the sound. And of course, we see it on the oscillator. It's nice to see. I kind of describe it as like a hollow, a thinning of the fundamental pitch kind of goes away, and you're just left with this airy, kind of otherworldly kind of sound, as opposed to just a straight tone. You can obviously hear the pitch. That's even more pronounced when you turn the frequency filter all the way down. Then you get really pretty hollowed out sounds, as I like to say. It's got an envelope generator, your basic ADSR, that's attack, delay, sustain, release. One important thing to note about that, when you're controlling these parameters, the attack, delay, and release are all time-based. So with the attack, you're adjusting the time it takes for that peak to hit. So that's with the attack all the way up. It takes a long time for the full sound to come in. However, the sustain is a volume amplitude, So we can change. That's just going to adjust the volume that the sustain is set to. And again, the delay is kind of the delay just is a time-based variable that affects how long it takes that sustain to start ringing out. And then the release again is another time-based. Just put that all the way up, it's just going to keep going. Ring out. So yeah, this is basically a nostalgia machine. Real quick run through the pros and cons. 1980s nostalgia trip, definitely. If you like Stranger Things, any kind of 80s like dance, disco music, you know, you name it. This probably has a lot of songs, right? During that time. The onboard sliders and switches make it really easy to just jump in and get involved, and I really think there's not a bad sound you can make with this. Like, you can start playing with it, and it all sounds good to me. I don't know. Like I said, tactile, optimized workflow. That's just one of the perks of being actual hardware, I guess. But it's known for its strings, pads, and its famous built-in chorus effect, which gives you this really wide stereo range of. That's chorus 2, which is basically, I'm not entirely sure about the different algorithms they have on 1 versus 2, but I think it's 2 is like fatter and wider.
Show us on versus off.
So here's off. Wasn't epic enough. So yeah. It's got portamento. The cons would be the voice chips go bad. I've heard a lot of horror stories on the internet of people buying them secondhand and the voice chips go out and you gotta ship them to someone who can do that, whatever. If you're handy with soldering, you can do it yourself. It doesn't have any aftertouch, meaning there's no expression control based on how hard you're pressing the keys, right? A lot of modern day synths have all the fancy features and you can be expressive with them and change the sound based on your pressure. Not this one, it was released in the 80s. That's fine too. No velocity sensitivity either, so no matter what, I can't make it any quieter than that or louder. Again, most modern day synthesizers might have that. Yeah, so it's got the sounds of your 80s Madonna, Depeche Mode, Chemical Brothers, Chromeo, Justice, Tame Impala, which is a personal favorite of mine. And I'll just demonstrate real quick. One of my favorite things to do with this synth is just play with the LFO. Right, you can bring the rate up, make it faster. Get a little bit more volume. Increase the intensity. Maybe make it a little faster. Slow it down. I encourage you to come up afterwards and play with this thing. It's a lot of fun. I have printed out the factory presets so you can go back to 1980 and go put your mind on where these programmers who shipped it out, what they were thinking, and get just get a little taste of the sounds of your past in the 1980s. All right, thank you. Any questions?
I had an observation that you didn't mention, but the filter and the volume are both being controlled by the envelope on most of the things you were playing.
Mm-hmm.
So you hit the note and it gets brighter, and then when you let up, it decays. So as the volume goes down, the sound gets darker as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep, kind of referencing the switch here that the filter does have this envelope attached to it. So you can shape the filter sound with that as well.
So the envelope is being applied to both the
Yes.
oscillator and the filter at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Can you separate them?
I don't believe you can. You
Okay.
can just turn it into gate mode,
Got
right? That completely doesn't look at the envelope. It's basically on or off. You can turn it back on and reapply that filter to shape your sound.
Cool.
I don't think you can separate them apart from that.
Got it. What's DCO? I see that on the screen.
DCO here,
Yeah.
that's the, I guess, the main generative force behind the synth. That we can do. I didn't talk about the vibrato effects. We can talk a little bit about that. That's how we can get a lot of the fun flavor, as if like a singer was doing vibrato with the note. The delay. You can also adjust the delay time. That's just the time it takes for it to take effect. Have it right away, or it's a little bit too much rate. You can start to hear it go up and down a little bit. Yeah, that's very nice for vibrato effects. The growls, especially if you get the resonance. You can get like some deep guttural kind of growls going on there.
Can you go through a couple of the presets you mentioned?
Sure, yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what the original program was made.
I don't have this printed off, but I'll go through just brass. It's known for their strings, 15 moving strings, brass and strings. And then the further you go, you get into weirder territory. Here's pizzicato, maybe just plucking on a violin string or something. Here's 74 sweep, it just says. Rocket Man 85. That's definitely got some noise in there, sounds like.
Is there a noise generator?
Yes, there is. I missed that, but here,
Got
just gives it some grittiness. Let's go to Bank B and see. That's weird. Bank B. Let's see, I saw one I liked. Harpsichord. Maybe some more Mozart. Fun little taps. This is melodic taps. I don't know about that one. It doesn't sound too melodic to me. Yeah, this is a lot of fun just to play with.
it. Awesome. Thank you. Great. Thank you.
All right.